To anyone familiar with the work of the great Iranian director Abbas Kiarostami, this shot is perhaps the most instantly recognizable image from his films. It shows an 8-year-old boy, Ahmed, running up a hill on his way to a nearby village. He has accidentally taken home his friend's school notebook, and the boy is in danger of expulsion if Ahmed doesn't return it. The shot exemplifies some of the key characteristics of Kiarostami's films. Cityscapes, and particularly landscapes, play a huge role in his stories. His characters are frequently on the move through these landscapes, on foot in Ahmed's case, and in cars and on motorcycles in the subsequent films. Kiarostami's stories tend to be simple. The premise that Ahmed must return the notebook is essentially all there is to the plot. Throughout the film, Ahmed just continues his efforts to find his friend. That simplicity, however, is balanced by an intense, in-depth attention to character that engages our sympathies and leads to a complexity based on our suspense about what will happen to them. Where is the Friend's Home has the simplest story of Kiarostami's major films. Still, most of the others are also fairly straightforward in comparison with the complexity of many European art movies and even Hollywood cinema. We tend to think that a complex text weaves together multiple plot lines and presents a clear exposition of character traits and desires. We might expect some flashbacks or dream sequences. Kiarostami avoids most of these techniques. He seldom includes even so common a device as a romantic subplot. Instead, Kiarostami's protagonist typically conceives a goal and works to achieve it through the length of the film. Given that the central goal is the main driving force of the story, it is odd that we often don't find out what that goal is until about 20 minutes into the film. In Where is the Friend's Home, Ahmed decides to go to the neighboring village to return his friend's notebook 22 minutes into the film. Up to then, we see his routine at school and watch as his mother demands that he stay home and do household chores and his homework. For the first 20 minutes or so of A Taste of Cherry, we watch Mr. Badi driving around the outskirts of Tehran, looking intently at the men he passes. We might assume he's a gay man cruising for a partner, as some of the men he speaks to seem to believe.
من به چیزی که احتیاج دارم دستاشوییست. نه احتیاجی به زبون شما دارم، نه به فکر شما.
Fully 24 minutes in, he finally reveals that his goal is to commit suicide, and he needs to find someone to bury him according to Muslim tradition. These openings generate a strong curiosity in us, since we are used to learning early on what a film's plot will deal with. I find personally that I speculate about these characters, and thus gain an investment in learning about their thoughts and hopes. Few directors make landscapes as prominent in their storytelling as Kiarostami does. He is one of the few auteurs whose films are strongly associated with a specific area and type of landscape. A more familiar example would be John Ford, whose westerns are indelibly linked in spectators' minds to the distinctive rock formations of Monument Valley. With Kiarostami, the landscapes are mostly the deserts and mountains of northern Iran, the surroundings of Tehran, and the countryside in between. Most of his films of the late 1980s and 1990s involve characters traveling, and the terrains through which they move make visible the shapes of the stories he tells. His use of landscape is poetic. The deserts of Iran may not be as scenic as the natural features of some other countries, but he treats them with a lingering lyricism that becomes one of the things we remember most about his films. In this shot from A Taste of Cherry, the camera is placed so that the car keeps disappearing behind the edges of hills. The camera pans to follow the car, but part of the time the framing is simply moving over the landscape itself. When I first saw A Taste of Cherry, I thought that the main character, Mr. Badi, was randomly wandering around the countryside near Tehran. If one watches more closely, it's clear that he takes a specific set of roads, especially around the area where he has dug a grave for himself. In general, Kiarostami's films show us the same locales again and again. The repeated shots of the same landscapes across the film create what we might term rhymes, enhancing their lyrical quality. Late in A Taste of Cherry, a Turkish taxidermist, the third of 3 passengers Mr. Body solicits help from, suggests that he take a new route, one that he says is longer but more beautiful. The Turk keeps telling him when to turn right or left. This shift of roads proves crucial to what we might take to be the outcome of Mr. Body's quest. In what we think of as conventional suspense films, the main characters get into a tense situation, there's suspense, and then they get out of it. Then there's another action scene with a new source of suspense, and that's resolved, and so on up to the climax. With Kiarostami, a suspenseful situation is set up and just keeps operating until the end. It could be a seemingly small problem, as Ahmed needing to return his friend's notebook. Kiarostami can be playful about keeping us in suspense. There's a moment in Where is the Friend's Home when Ahmed thinks he has found his friend. The family in the house has the right last name. The boy he sees is wearing the right colored trousers and is about the right size, but he emerges from the house carrying a shutter that hides his face. It's a frustrating moment for us, because by now we are deeply absorbed in Ahmed's quest and really hope that he has found his friend. The boy doesn't lower the shutter until he's standing behind a donkey, so our discovery of whether he's the right boy is further delayed. Kiarostami demonstrates that you don't need ticking bombs or end-of-the-world threats to generate suspense. As we get accustomed to his simple, deliberate presentation of the story, we become deeply concerned with whether Ahmed returns the notebook. In A Taste of Cherry, we wonder whether Body will find someone to help him commit suicide, and indeed, whether he will ultimately carry through his plan. If you're about to watch your first Kiarostami film, you're in for a treat. If you're already familiar with Kiarostami, you know that your understanding and pleasure only deepen with repeat viewings.